Okay, so I'm going to pick up from where I left the other video. So as I was saying, the negative aspects of increasing infrastructure spending for a company, so for a big company that potentially has substantial profits like Tesco, is that a company like Tesco will be taxed a bit more. Okay, so it will receive a higher corporate tax on their profits. And if a company, of course, is facing higher corporate tax, then that means that their profit is going to be lower. And as a result, they might start cutting where they can, the costs where they can. So they might start cutting costs where they can. And let's say one of the most common things that happen in these cases when a company needs to try and reduce their costs is they might lay off some workers, and this may mean a potentially higher level of redundancy. Okay, so you can definitely explain that this is negative for the company, because if the company is laying off so many workers, then that might mean that the staff that is remaining has too much work to do, so they have too much on their plate, and as a result this might mean that they might not be working as efficiently as they were before when the staff was in, let's say, its perfect number of required people and so on. Okay, and of course then you make your little chain of events. I'm not going to do everything for you, but please think about that. Okay, so again, it doesn't really matter if you want to do your own pros and cons and not follow mine. This is just some sort of guidance that I'm giving you here, and this is how I would see the paragraph. So I would see the paragraph, this one here, as the first paragraph, and then this one here as our second paragraph. But it really doesn't matter, and plus the more different your assignment is, the better, because the marker will really appreciate if your essays are different from each. So of course the more different your essays are, the better. Okay, so now limiting benefit payments. So what are the pros and what are the cons for Tesco in relation to limiting benefit payments? So if the government stops spending so much money on benefits, the good thing about this is that, of course, this implies a reduction in the spending. So a reduction in spending also means lower taxes from individuals and businesses. So for Tesco, this might mean a reduction in corporate tax, meaning that the redundancies that the company might think of doing when the corporate tax is high may not be as high anymore, because they're not spending such high taxes, if that makes sense. Okay, so the opposite effects from what we said here. So we have the opposite effect of what we said here in the eventuality of benefits being cut. But the negative aspects of limiting benefit payments are that so if you reduce the benefits, this reduces the amount of money given to families that are out of work that live in an area near a Tesco. So of course, if this was the case, then those individuals will probably start going for cheaper options, like for companies like Asda or for companies like Lidl, and therefore this mechanism may impact Tesco as government spending goes down, and therefore people who struggle may only be able to shop for necessary goods and services in Tesco. So they're only going to be buying things like staple foods and so on, and probably limiting all other more expensive brands or luxury goods, or even in some cases it might just go to a different company. Okay, so like Lidl, which is cheaper. So limiting benefit payments is not necessarily the best for Tesco if you look at it like this. And then the final kind of not the final paragraph, but the penultimate paragraph that I thought of is what would happen if the government increased more of their spending on subsidies. Okay, so let's imagine that the government decides to help out a company, so an organization, not a company, an organization that wants to help out, that wants to make more aware big companies like Tesco about the environment. Okay, so let's imagine the government supports this organization, and this organization goes around these supermarkets and trains workers in Tesco, for instance, to become better at managing environmental threats. Okay, and you can see that the pro for this is that Tesco might gain a better reputation, and then you make your chain of reasoning. But the cons of this kind of effect might be that for Tesco it may be a bit expensive to adapt to environmentally friendly needs. Like for instance, if they have to buy bags that are biodegradable, I'm not so sure on the details. Those bags may be a little bit more expensive than the normal plastic bags, or maybe this kind of system might disrupt the workers' normal activities, which means that they were used to acting in a specific way, and then all of a sudden they have to think about all these new requirements from these environmentally friendly systems. I don't really know. This is something that is a bit ambiguous, but this is just kind of like a paragraph that I've put here for you to think of, but you don't really have to write it down if you don't understand it. But if you think that you understand what I'm trying to say here, please do write a paragraph on the effect of higher subsidies on Tesco. And then the last, or it could be the first paragraph that I think would be quite good to write about, would be a whole paragraph spent talking about how the money multiplier may be effective, may affect Tesco positively or negatively. And you can say that the reason why it may impact Tesco positively is because if there is higher spending in the economy, it is likely that companies such as pubs, such as restaurants and so on, and even individuals may buy more from Tesco. They might buy the more luxury kind of brands or goods because they want to manage their restaurants or pub and make it a bit more classy and expensive. I don't know. So you can say that on the one hand, the money multiplier will probably be beneficial for Tesco because it may mean an increase in sales. But then you can say that on the other hand, it is difficult to know this because the money multiplier is just an economic concept. It's not necessarily always applicable, because there was this example of a fallacy in which basically if a person was to get a brick and break the window of a little business, like a little pub business, then this would potentially lead to multiplier effects, because you break the window of that pub, the pub goes, let's say that this is all happening in a little small village, that pub there goes and finds the person that can repair the window, and the person that's going to repair the window is going to go and buy the glass from the person who's selling the glass, and that would kind of cause the same effect. But it would be silly to think that just because you're spending more money, then that leads to potentially positive effects. So you can kind of make that argument about the money multiplier. You say it's not always applicable, and you can always say that normally it would lead to positive outcomes for a company like Tesco, but it is just a concept. So maybe you can think about that, or maybe you can try and find a different way of describing how the money multiplier effect could also impact Tesco negatively. Now, I hope that was clear. Please email me if it's not clear at all. I'm going to post the slides maybe on Friday so that you actually do have a look at what I've said. And yeah, I hope it was clear, girls, and let me know if you need anything. You can email me or whatnot. Okay, have a lovely day, and thank you very much for listening. Okay, right.